and we are now left with only one more step before we actually begin to work with our students. That is preparing all the course material that we need. It's very important once again to do this before the course begins as far as possible, so that during the course we have the time to focus on other things. What are the materials that we need? It seems like it's not a lot of stuff, but in fact it ends up being quite a lot that would help us and make our lives easier. We use something called model texts, particularly when we're looking at reading and writing. What are these model texts? These are usually published or student work that is similar to what we are asking our students to do. They are model texts in the sense that we will use them in order to read them for structure, in order to analyze how they work, what in them functions well, what doesn't function well. These texts don't have to be perfect. The point is that we take them, we as instructors read them carefully and we annotate them, or at least some of them. And when we share them with the students, we have a conversation or we show them how to read our annotations so that they're able to observe in each one of these model texts what we want them to focus on. For example, if we want them to focus on what goes into an introduction, what goes into the body, what goes into the conclusion, our annotations on the margins will point that out. If we want them to focus on how the author uses anecdote in order to introduce their observations and then provides the technical observations and then goes on to analysis, then we point that out. It's also important when we're using model texts to remember to make reference to them in class. So even if they're not discussed in class, we need to integrate them into our conversation so that the students are motivated to use them. Now, based on our experience, we know that if we provide one model, all the students are likely to take that as a template, as a framework, and they're likely to try to write exactly like that. The ideal situation would be to provide several models and to point out the differences. So that gives to the students options of how to go about choosing things that they need to be choosing while writing their text. So for example, some people write in a terser fashion, some people write more flamboyantly, some people use anecdotes, some people don't. Some have a more formal writing, of course within the boundaries that are acceptable within that genre, right? So the important thing that model texts do is to provide inspiration to show the students what the final output should look like and to get them to see what the options are. What's the play that is allowed to them, so that the writing doesn't feel very, very regimented, because every type of writing will not be template based, right? These are model texts for us, and sometimes it's useful to talk to people who have some experience annotating them before we give them to the students. Another important material to prepare are the instructions for the assignments that we want the students to make. An assignment is a craft, is an art. So making a clear set of assignment instructions is something that takes time. We can't do it in 5 minutes before class. We can't do it in 5 minutes within class. We need to sit down and think about it a lot. So let's use as a sample, as a model text, if you will, the assignment that you have for this particular course, in which we've asked you to write a reflective essay. What the assignment instructions give you are a set of things. One is the name of the assignment. What is this? It's a reflective essay. So basically you're asked to write a reflective essay on a topic. The topic is given very briefly: teaching reading and writing in disciplines of design and the built environment, a standpoint. What is this trying to do? Is trying to capture the assignment as a whole. But giving this is not enough. The students need to be clear on what are the objectives of this assignment. What do we want them to do through it? For instance, we want them to reflect critically on something or the other. Along with the objectives, we need to provide the instructions. How are they supposed to do this assignment? They're supposed to use their daily reflections and then produce something else. They're supposed to use their sight observations and then do something else. And here we need to be very, very clear on the kind of questions that the assignment is supposed to respond, what are the things that matter, and to what an extent all of these have to be covered or they're given only as a guideline. So in the note here, the students of this course are told that the questions are indicative. They should be addressed cohesively. Don't take them one by one. If you want to focus on only one, that is also okay. Right? So this clarity is absolutely essential. Then the assignment gives you a brief note on the type of writing that you're expected to do. In this particular assignment, we took this stand. We decided to give only this brief note because we're dealing with tutors. So we know that you as tutors will be able to find out more about reflective essays. We don't have to comprehensively provide you with materials. But in the case of students who are at the starting point, we want to give them sometimes more detailed notes, and at that point, we will just indicate in the assignment instructions that they will have materials to help them reflect. In the same assignment instructions, we need to put in the grading rubric. That is why it's important for the grading rubric to be ready well in advance. And this grading rubric, as you can see, is going to be very, very detailed. And finally, our assignment instructions will give clear submission guidelines, all the things that matter. What format we expect, what number of words, what deadlines, what feedback will be given, when will be the final submission, all of it needs to be provided. Once we have done this, and remember something like this will take time and will need discussion and will need fine tuning. Once we've done it, we also make sure that we put together a calendar or a timeline in which we take into account all the things we considered earlier on while designing the process. So when will the input be provided? How much time will the students take to write? What else is happening in their lives? If we have a jury week, obviously perhaps we don't want to put an assignment during the same week. All of those things need to be tailored and balanced, so it's good to have a calendar to start with. We also want to be ready with our feedback and peer feedback guidelines because these also take some time to conceptualize. We want to make sure that we record what should go into a general comment, what should go into an in-text comment, at what point in what draft we focus on what aspects of the learning outcome. Everything in the feedback that we provide, this is the formative feedback, everything needs to be tailored to lead towards the learning outcomes. But it might be that we don't want to focus on all the learning outcomes in each draft, so then we separate them. For instance, sometimes at lower levels, we provide content focused or even larger aspects focused feedback in the first draft, and in the second, we focus on fine tuning the flow, we focus on fine tuning the paragraphing, on grammar, on such things. Once we have all of this in place, it will be easier for us as tutors to keep this in mind when we provide feedback for the students. But this is also a resource that is shared with the students so they know what to expect from us. So if we miss out on something in our feedback, they can ask us or they can ask their peers. We also provide resources, either connected to the genre that we want them to write or techniques and strategies like skimming or like close reading or like writing a particular kind of text or strategies to deal with writer's blocks. We provide reference lists, but we need to do our homework before giving those. We cannot just give 100 texts, we need to make a selection. We can give 100 texts but say these ones are required, these ones are optional. So a lot of time goes into putting these lists together, but once they're made, they can be used for a long time and updated as and when needed. We also provide AV materials. Remember that some people understand things and learn things better with audiovisual stuff, and lists of software necessary to manage their reading and writing processes. And finally, have a look at the course policies provided for this course itself and think of how you would frame the policies for your own course. There are aspects which would go into every course policy. Sometimes there are things which are covered by the institutional policies, but it is important to define them for us. It is important to define how attendance will be taken, what is permissible, what is not, how participation will be graded, if it will be, assignments and deadlines, and what will happen if somebody misses them. All of these aspects need to be defined very clearly from the very beginning. Have a look at the sample document. the policy for this course and try to use this for the course that you are designing for your own students. And with this, our materials will be ready and prepared, and we are now close to taking the step of discussing with our students and sharing all of them.